Hello, my mathematicians. This is Miss Foster with a brief introduction to fractions. I'm loading a bunch of super awesome, rich math problems that you can play with to your heart's content. But if you don't know what a fraction is or how they work, it's going to really help you if you do. So this is pretty quick. If you need a review, it'll work for that too. Let's take a look at what are fractions. So the word fraction comes from a word that means to break. It's fracture, and you can see it right over here. Now, to actually help you with this, I found an x-ray of a bone fracture. This is somebody's arm, and you can see right here they got a break. And then they're going to get a cast, and they will take care of this bone fracture until the body heals, which it totally can. So that's just to help you remember that fractions are about taking whole things and breaking them into pieces. But the pieces have to be equal. Fractions must have equal parts. So here my whole thing is, think of it as the blue rectangle right here. Might look like a square, I don't know if it is, I do know it's a rectangle. A flat figure with 4 straight sides and equal angles, which are all right angles. So we have 4 of them here. Does this one have equal parts? I say yes, but let me prove that to you. Can I? Whoa, I can't prove it to you. So just looking at it, I think we can tell. And that's good enough because in our pictures and drawings, we won't always show it exactly right. So we're just trying to get as close as we can. What about this one? I showed this to one of my kids today. I said, if I get the blue and you get the orange, is that equal? And my child said, no. And he's right. It is not equal. So we can't talk about fractions with this shape. Then we looked at this one. I said, if I get blue and you get pink, is this fair? And he said, well, it's fair for me, but not for you. So that's not what fair means. I told him, and I tell you, it's good for you if you want the pink part of the chocolate and I only get the blue, but it is not fair for you. It's just good. And then I asked my son to look at this chocolate bar, blue chocolate bar. I love talking about chocolate with fractions. Do you think that this is equal parts? And after looking at it for a while, we agreed that yes. The fractions don't have to be a certain shape. They just have to show that if we broke it into 2 parts here, they'd be equal. And I would get half, and you would get half. Now, it turns out 1/2 is a super important fraction because it's the one that we use the most. And it's so helpful as we really understand fractions. So we'll be talking a lot about halves going forward. Now, fractions are showing relationships. Specifically, fractions show a relationship between pieces and parts and whole things. When kids are little, we talk about whole numbers a lot. When we talk about 3 plus 5 is 8, that's whole numbers. When we talk about 100 minus 50 equals 50, they're whole numbers. Fractions are challenging because they are about pieces and parts. And so when we write a fraction, it will always show the relationship between the pieces and the whole thing. A fraction is written with a bar, so this is the fraction bar here. And it has a number on top. The number on top is the numerator. It's red. It's the number of parts you get. So here's a rectangle, and let's say you get the pink red part up here. You would get 1 of the pieces. If it's chocolate, congratulations. If you don't like chocolate, imagine it's something else you want, and congratulations. I love chocolate, so you'll hear a lot about that. Then there's another number in fractions, and what it tells us, it's blue, it's on the bottom in this case, and it's showing us the number of parts in the whole thing. So this blue dotted line is hopefully showing you that I had the whole chocolate bar. I chopped it into 2 equal pieces, and I gave 1 to you, and you got 1/2. The thing about denominators, though, is that they tell us a lot more. Let me show you. There's so much cool stuff with denominators. I love them. Okay, so here I have a bunch of unit fractions. And, hold on a second, let me get it so you can see all of them too. I have 1/2, 1/3, and 1/4. The denominator will tell you the number of pieces in the whole thing. So this is 1/2, you get the red part. There are 2 of those parts in the whole thing. These are thirds. You get the red part. There's 1, 2, 3 equal parts. And here are fourths. You get the pinky red part. There are 1, 2, 3, 4 of those. So it tells you how many pieces are in the whole thing. But it also tells you the kinds of parts in the whole. For example, these are halves, and they are different from thirds, aren't they? These are thirds, and these are fourths. And even more than that, you get information about the size of the parts in the whole thing. Like, check out this third that I just took over here. A third is smaller than a half, isn't it? And that makes sense, especially if you have to do a lot of sharing. Because if we had a chocolate bar and we were dividing it between just me and you, then you'd get one equal piece and I would get one equal piece and we would be friends. But I have two sisters. And when I was growing up and there was a chocolate bar, I would only get 1/3 because there had to be one for Erica, one for Amy, and one for Jane. Ugh. Now, some of you might even have 3 siblings, or you might be in a group of cousins or friends and there are 4 of you. If we take that same chocolate bar and we chop it into 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces, you're only going to get 1/4. So you know, because you share things a lot, that sharing with more people means you don't get as much. And we call this an inverse relationship. It's pretty tricky. The lower the size of the denominator, the larger the pieces are. I mean, compare 1/2, I'm just going to stack these up to 1/3, and compare that to the fourths. Oh my goodness. And that turns out to be super important the higher you go with fractions in different grade levels. Trust me, denominators don't just tell you the number of parts in the whole thing. That gives you a lot of information about the kinds of parts you have and how big they are compared to the whole thing. Now there's one last thing I want to draw your attention to with fractions, and that is that fractions are highly related to division. Now you may not have started division, but a lot of kids love multiplication and division, especially if we don't normally teach it in their grade level. Like, I bet there are a lot of kindergartners watching this who would love to talk about division. When we divide things, we take whole things and we chop them into smaller groups, and all those groups have to be equal. So here's 1/2, 1/3, 2/3, we'll talk about that in just a moment, and 3/4. Oh, it's getting exciting here. I want to point out first, though, this is the sign that you will begin using first for division. And do you notice how it kind of looks like a fraction? There's the fraction bar, and this dot stands for whatever number's in the numerator, the amount you get, and this is a dot representing the denominator, the number of parts in the whole thing. So division and fractions have a special relationship I want you to keep in mind. Now, we are going to be starting with what we call unit fractions that have a 1 in the numerator. We use those the most, and they're the most helpful to learn first. But you don't have to keep a 1 in the numerator. Like, let's look at this chocolate bar. Once upon a time, there was a chocolate bar, and Erica had to share it with Amy and Jane. But Jane said, Erica, I don't feel like eating chocolate today. You have my third. And then I get 2/3. You can do that with fractions. I get 2 of the parts, and there are 3 altogether. This is useful if you want to make Amy feel bad because, na, 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 I got more than you. Yes. Nod your head if you're with me on that. You guys, I am much nicer to my sister Amy than I was when I was a kid. Learn from me. Be nice to your siblings. What if there were 4 of us and 1 chocolate bar? Look at this 3/4. What if I had a chocolate bar chopped up into 4 equal pieces and you got to have 3 of them because you are my favorite person? You would get 3 pieces out of 4, and we would write that as 3/4. You're still getting 3 of these pieces. They're still fourths, but you get all 3 of them. So that's a brief introduction to fractions. Now, there are a lot of problems. I'm going to be sending you some puzzles, some games, some activities where you can play and play and play with fractions. The more you play math, the better off you're going to be in math. So thank you today for playing math with me and talking about chocolate and letting me be just a little bit unkind to my 5-year-old sister Amy, who is now much, much older than that. And please be nice to your siblings. Until next time, bye-bye for now.